What up, guys? So today I wanted to talk about the Cyprus digital nomad visa. Now, if you're looking at islands in the Mediterranean to go for a digital nomad, you got a couple options. You have Malta, you could go to some around Italy, you could go to some Greek islands, and then you have Cyprus. Now, technically, Cyprus is geographically in the Middle East, but kind of politically and culturally, it's a bit more European. I mean, it's used the euro, so we're kind of counting it as a European country politically for this. But anyways, if you're considering Cyprus, let's get into some of the more specific details about the digital nomad visa. Now, the application process is okay, maybe not exactly straightforward, but you do it in person. So you will want to collect all your paperwork and then fly to Cyprus and apply. So you won't know if you are approved or not until after you've already flown there and you have secured an apartment and all that stuff. It kind of like Malta, because it's so small, it's not going to have embassies all over the world. So you have to kind of do it in person. It's kind of unfortunate that you can't do the entire thing online. Like Malta has changed some of it, so you do have to do a bit more like Zoom kind of interaction meeting type things. But even so, you can apply from anywhere and you will know if you have it or not before you even get to the country. Cyprus, you got to go in and you'll find out. But we'll get into that. So the application costs €70, which is on the low end of the application spectrum. And to qualify, you have to make at least €3,500 a month. So you're talking about kind of just close to 4,000 US dollars. I say just shoot for that amount to qualify. You'd rather make more than kind of the minimum, because if they're kind of not sure with you, if you're right at the threshold of the financial curve, they might just not approve it. So it's always better to make more, but I say at least shoot for 4,000 US dollars. You can be a freelance remote worker. You could have like a standard job, but you're able to work remotely. You will want to have contracts saying you're allowed to work remotely. If you are a freelance writer, or a freelance contract creator, professional, you will want to have just contracts saying that you work, with these different entities. It's always better to have that kind of safeguard to prove that you will continue working with these different clients while you're on your digital nomad visa. It's generally pretty easy enough to get that kind of contract from your client, even if you don't have one currently. Everyone I've ever worked with is pretty easy going with providing that kind of documentation. You will need a letter of intent, which is kind of like if you're applying for a job, you kind of got to, kiss backside a little bit for why you want to apply for that job. It's pretty much the same thing. You're basically creating a CV for why you want to go to Cyprus. Now, the one thing that is very unique with Cyprus that I have not seen with other countries is you have to have very specific medical records signed off by and certified by a specialist. And one is blood work. The blood work has to show that you are negative for HIV, syphilis, hepatitis B and C, and you need chest x-rays for TB. I have not really seen that kind of very specifics for other places. So if you test negative for any of that, they're not going to let you in. You have to have a doctor certifying all that. So even though the application is €70, you're going to have to pay for all this medical work. So depending on if you have insurance, depending on different things, that might add a couple $100 more to the application process. Now, because you can kind of apply for this anywhere, you can have this paperwork done in Cyprus. You can have it done in a different country. As long as it's certified by a medical professional, you should be okay. Like if I'm in Argentina right now, I can have it done by, a doctor here, and it would cost less. But just keep that in mind. And you will need all that paperwork with you. So when you arrive in Cyprus and you apply, you will take all that information with you. You will want to have the completed application with you, which you can just download directly from the Cyprus immigration website. have everything finished. It's not complex as long as you just kind of follow the bullet points of information that they will give you. Just follow those, and the application isn't that complicated. Just follow the instructions. So you won't need like an immigration attorney or anything like that. Now, it can take between 1 and 2 months to receive word back on if you have been approved or not. Which hopefully it's sooner rather than later, because you have 90 days in Cyprus or within that whole region before you have to leave. So, highly recommend as soon as you make it to Cyprus to go and apply. Now, you will probably need to get like a long-term rental, or really what I'd recommend is, although I'm not a huge fan of Airbnb for these particular instances, it's best to just kind of rent out an Airbnb for a month for this kind of situation. Once you have once you're approved, your digital nomad visa is good for a year. You can't extend it to 2. But once you have that kind of in hand, you're able to kind of find something, an apartment that's a little more concrete, so you're not dealing with Airbnb for that stuff, because you will overpay for an Airbnb. Now, taxes. This is one of the downsides of the Cyprus digital nomad visa. As long as you stay less than 183 days, so less than half the year, you are fine. You don't have to pay taxes. But once you cross that 183-degree threshold, you are considered a tax resident and you have to pay taxes. Now, based on the minimum requirements to be approved for a digital nomad visa, you will be paying 30% of your income up to 60,000 euro. If you earn more than 60,000 euro, your taxes will be 35%. Now, on top of the 30 to 35%, you will pay an 8.3% Social Security contribution, which you might not ever get back. There is a 19% VAT, which technically I think you can get that back. Just you're gonna have to have your passport on you at all times. You're gonna have to get receipts for everything. It's a major pain in the backside, but that's 19%. And then there's a 12.5% corporate tax. Now, the United States and Cyprus does have a tax agreement, so you won't be double taxed, but that is still a pretty hefty tax rate once you start adding all this stuff up. So even though the U.S. tax stuff will be a wash, you're paying it's a pretty penny, especially when you compare to Malta, where there are no taxes on your digital nomad visa. So you got to keep that in mind if you're comparing islands in the Mediterranean. Malta is probably the best for taxes, because Greece is similar to Cyprus in that once you cross that 6-month threshold during a calendar year, you got to pay taxes, and the Greek tax rates are high. So keep that in mind. So that's pretty much the down low on Cyprus. If you really like it, go for it. But for me, like, you can stay only up to 2 years, and those taxes are high. So unless you're only gonna, kind of be there and plan on bouncing around for more than half the year, go for it. But if you want to stay in one place for a long period of time, it's probably better to go to Turkey or Malta or someplace else. But anyways, let's get into a little more background on the country itself. So Cyprus has a population of 1.25 million people. Roughly 300,000 of that population lives in Nicosia, which is the capital. Now, comparatively speaking, Malta is about half the size population-wise as Cyprus. And man, I didn't look up, but the population of the capital of Malta is like 15,000, 20,000 people. But it's a lot of Malta is just kind of a city. It just kind of like blends into the next city. But I think it's probably prudent to compare Malta and Cyprus together if this is the kind of digital nomad visa you're going for. Now, they use the euro. And language-wise, the official languages are Greek and Turkish, although you shouldn't have a problem speaking English in Cyprus. Roughly 75% of the population speaks English, and there's a lot of tourist aspects to the island, so you shouldn't have a problem getting around if you just speak English and you struggle with learning other languages. Let's talk about some popular food and beverages for Malta. Now, the most popular beer, for Cyprus, the most popular beer for Cyprus is KEO beer. It's a lager. It's made on the island. It's a lager, so it'll be good for the hot summers. And the national drink is a Cypriot brand. No, I'm sorry. It is a brandy sour that's made with a Cypriot brandy, which is then mixed with lemon juice, bitters, and soda water. So it's kind of like a kind of a refreshing cocktail for your island, hot island Mediterranean lifestyle. As for food, again, the food is based on its location. It's basically take Greek, take Turkish, blend it together, and that's really what you're going to be getting. If you've ever had souvlaka at a Greek restaurant, that is very prominent. And you have something called a souvla. Souvla is basically larger cuts of meat. It's a larger cut of meat version of souvlaki. So in terms of taste, generally the same thing. It's just bigger versus smaller. I forgot to look up how to pronounce this, but something called sheftalis, and it's kind of similar to a flattened chorizo or sausage, because you take minced pork, and you combine it with onions and different spices, and then it's wrapped in kind of the inner lining of the pig or lamb stomach, and so it's very similar to how you'd make a traditional pork sausage. Now it's kind of breaded on the outside, so it's a little more you got a little more crunch and texture going on, but in terms of just the basics of how it's made, similar. And also you have an interesting soup called agolemoni. You have an interesting soup called agolemoni. Again, I apologize if I did not pronounce that correctly, but it is a soup that's made out of chicken stock. It's got some lemon juice. It's got beaten egg. It's got some rice in it. Now, in terms of consistency, it's fairly similar to like an egg drop soup that you might get at a Chinese restaurant. Although I believe the beaten egg is added at the beginning. It's not added after the broth starts to heat up, so you won't have that kind of cloudy egg drop aspect that the Asian version has. But in terms of just consistency, it's pretty similar. But the lemon juice helps kind of give it a lighter taste to it. But so it's kind of refreshing. It's going to be hot out. You got some of that lemon juice, but you also got the protein. It's going to be filling. So pretty decent for that kind of climate. But yeah, anyways, that's kind of just a general overview of Cyprus, of the small island country, of the digital nomad visa, and why you may or may not want to consider applying for it. But anyways, that is the visa, and that is everything for now. Like, subscribe, do all the good stuff, and I will catch you guys later.